Hi guys, welcome to another exciting tech talk here at ACT Computers. My name is Cameron and I'm joined here with Justin.
Indeed.
So Justin, you have some experience with programming and AI. What are
Yes.
some of your qualifications?
I've been a programmer for over a decade now professionally. I've been doing it unprofessionally for much longer than that. For the most part, I've just loved computers since I was a little kid. And I've done a lot of research into artificial intelligence. In fact, when I was a child, I wanted to develop artificial intelligence, like actual artificial intelligence. What people are now calling artificial general intelligence, AGI. They've moved the goalposts, but that's a whole different thing.
And then there's some people even saying that AI is just applied statistics, that it's not actually a self-recognized or entity.
Actually, that is pretty much true. A better term is machine learning. Which is effectively applied statistics. You're doing a lot of basically math, random values, calculation, at very, very high speeds. That's why GPUs are very, very good for that. But it is very high-end applied statistics.
So like at its simplest level, if you had a school class spreadsheet with grades, grade point average on it, and you ran a function that estimated the average of the class, and you asked this program to do this to every class, and then spit out who the best class was. That would be a very, very simple.
Yeah, it would be a very simple way to predict potentially what class would do best on the next test.
Right, and then
Right.
based off of that, it could grow from that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're talking about today is AI in general. Some people see it as a big scary thing from 1984 where your TV's watching you. Some people see it as the born identity where you don't necessarily have control over it. But there's a lot of people like me who use it every single day. I even used it to write this whole speech. What's your take on it?
It is fairly good technology if you know how to use it and when to use it, right? And you don't try to misapply it. There are a lot of potential dangers, a lot of foot guns, a lot of places where it can do more harm than good, especially when people don't understand what it is and what's going on, and they believe it's just some magic sauce that they can add to their whatever they're doing and get a good result.
So it seems like there's benefits in education, but there are also negatives in education. Like it can be used to personalize learning experiences based on, like we talked about, grade point averages, how people are doing in reading in other classes, to make a more personalized learning experience. But at the same time, it can be used for plagiarism.
It can be used for plagiarism. It can also be used for, not just plagiarism, but also for hurting yourself in a way. So there was one of the biggest models that a lot of people are very familiar with is ChatGPT, right? And you probably use that to write a good portion of that. There were a pair of lawyers not that long ago who were issued a $5,000 fine from a court because they used ChatGPT to research court filings and cited 6 fake cases. So they basically had, hey, ChatGPT, make us this thing that we're going to put in front of the court. It output something, and then they just put it in front of the court.
So I actually experienced this the other day. I was testing out the ability for it to lie and for it to formulate these falsehoods so effectively. I told it to write an essay about capitalism and do in-text citation APA. And it made some great citations of papers that don't exist.
Yeah, that is very much a thing. Another person who I follow, a really nice blog, AIweirdness.com. Janelle Shane is really awesome, does a lot of cool things, and she did one experiment with ChatGPT, Bing Chat, where she asked it about different blog posts that were posted to her blog, and it came up with a handful that are blatant lies, and then it gaslit her, telling her, no, I know better, and you don't know anything about your own blog.
Is that what gaslighting is?
Yeah, that is. It's basically saying, no, it's what I'm saying is true, even though it's probably false.
Another weird thing about ChatGPT is it's a smart, dumb computer program. So if you say how many E's are in the word ketchup, it's going to say there are no E's in the word ketchup. Or how many O's are in the word mayonnaise. There are no O's in the word mayonnaise. Please spell the word ketchup. It'll spell it fine, but conceptually it's not there. It's a very smart child.
It's a large language model, and it's basically a form of statistics that based on preceding words, what is the next most likely word? And sometimes you'll see like 40 billion parameters, 60 billion parameters or something like that. And that's just basically how big this parameter space or how many words it can think about at the same time is, right? And that way it can generate all of these things, and it has a kind of a concept of what has been, but it doesn't know what any of the things mean.
So what I found when I'm working with ChatGPT is the better your prompt is, the better your results will be. Often I will write a full paragraph or two before I get my response, so that way it understands the full scope of what I'm actually asking for.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the positive and negatives of it. So we said that it could be good for personalized education, but what are some negative impacts other than the lawyer thing?
So one of the things that a handful of people are kind of worried about is students. Students writing fake papers, right? I'm studying the Fourth Amendment, let's say, and I don't want to write me a paper. ChatGPT, write me a paper about the Fourth Amendment. It must be 500 words or whatever, right? 500 words is extremely small, but anyway. And it will go ahead and happily write me a paper. Professors now have a problem, okay? Did I just get an AI to write my paper? Or do I actually understand the work, and can I go ahead and, should I pass Justin, essentially, right? Did Justin actually write it?
I've heard that they're using AI to detect if it's AI written.
Yes. Now here's something that's kind of shocking. Also from AI Weirdness, I got this. There's a paper, she didn't write the paper, but she found this paper. AI detector programs have a false positive rate of 48 to 76% for non-native speakers. So that means that if someone is Hispanic living in the United States, or if they're from India or Pakistan or somewhere else, and they want to get an American education, or even, they're just learning those stuff in English, right? They are much more likely to be treated as this was AI written, as opposed to, no, they wrote it themselves, right? Actual native English speakers is between 0 and 12%, right? So even if you're native, it could come up wrong.
Right.
And she did something very interesting. If you have the right prompts and you know what you're doing, you can get these AI detectors to say that, oh, no, this was 100% guaranteed written by a human, but have it actually generated by an AI, by ChatGPT. If you use, she has a couple of examples on her site, use very colorful language, use this type of thing or whatever, and it will happily do that. And it's like, no, this definitely was written by an actual person. And one of the quotes from her is, to be clear, any false positive is a problem. When the consequence of a falsely accusing a student of cheating can be devastating. But it's even worse when students who are already at a disadvantage are much more likely to be repeatedly singled out.
Yeah, and any kind of technology coming out nowadays has to take into accountability the accessibility of it for people who are disabled, people who, as you said, are English as a second language, and that has to be really considered. Now, does ChatGPT and those AIs only really work in English? Are there other languages?
They probably have them in other languages. I am not very familiar. Offhand, unfortunately, American is my only language. But, even if it's in a different language, right, probably the same things will happen, right? So even if and my guess is that even though Google Translate uses something similar for a large language model, so you can go from English to Japanese to Chinese to French to German back to English and get basically the same sentence out.
Now, I see an issue with those other languages. It has to take into account the context. So, and I know in Spanish, you can use the adjective before or after the noun rather than before. There's certain ways to say things, and there's also certain area-specific things. You might say, oh, that's a green day. What does that mean? To a native speaker, they might understand, oh, it's a great day for plants. Mm-hmm. So it has to take into account of that, because there's translation and then also transliteration.
Yes.
Two big things. Are you concerned at all about the military applications of AI?
Oh, yeah. So one of the big things that a lot of people haven't really seen a lot of, probably, but I've seen a little bit advertised to me, is deep fake detection. right? And so this is a real-time program. A deepfake is a real-time program that, I'm sitting here, I'm talking, but then either my face or someone else's face, Muhammad Ali, let's say. I can be sitting here as Muhammad Ali. I'm definitely not the right skin tone for that. Speaking in Arabic, right? And everything I'm saying is being translated, and then all of my gestures and everything else is being transferred to basically a 3D model that looks like Muhammad Ali.
Which has to do with facial tracking and,
Yes.
and facial recognition.
Yes. And this gets scary because now you can do something like, we don't like this particular political candidate in this, second or third world country, so let's make a video of this person saying something horrible, right? Or doing something horrible,
Right.
Or let's do the opposite. Let's take someone who we want to push up and no, they did something great,
Now, I've seen it on the lighter side of things. I've seen it on Facebook where people have taken Arnold Schwarzenegger and put him in the Waterboy, and put him in all kinds of funny situations. He was John Travolta in Grease. They did a version with him.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be humorous aspects to it, and it might even help with green screening in the future, being able to check those certain things. So you have a body double that doesn't look exactly like that person.
Yeah, I know. What's his name? He's from that movie Die Hard.
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis. He's getting old. He's not able to make movies anymore, and he's, from what I understand, actually licensed his face and his body to star in movies in the future. I think his kids get royalties or whatever. I'm not sure of the details, but I've only heard about this. But that's a really cool thing, right? So we can have more awesome Bruce Willis Christmas movies in the future.
So back in the early 2000s, we heard something called voice pattern recognition, where you would have these robots call you and they kind of sounded human, but they were really choppy. And it was someone who recorded basically reading a dictionary out loud, and the computer strung them together. Now, AI is able to replicate people's voices after a couple paragraphs.
There's stuff like that. There's actually a really cool feature or thing that I like that's actually come out of that a little bit, that we can talk about in a little bit. But yeah, after a little bit, it can replicate your voice. It can try to so people can take not necessarily what you've said, but take what you've said, put it through a little algorithm, and then make something else say something potentially horrible, detrimental to you.
So there's a big concern with the military aspect of what I brought up. So having a system that can automatically attack or detect incoming missiles and respond to it is great, but there's always that margin of error. If you see a duck flying and you think it's a nuclear missile coming, are you going to send a bunch of flak to take care of it?
I forget the gentleman's name, but the Russians during the Cold War installed a brand new radar detection system, and they turn it on, and it's flashing red, right? The Americans are sending missiles right now. We need to launch missiles back, right? And this gentleman did not. He refused. He's like, no, I am not going to launch missiles right now. We just turned this on. There's something else going on. They're like, no, it's perfectly fine. You have to launch the missiles. Thank God for this man, because he did not launch the missiles, because we did not launch missiles. It was a false positive. Their brand new system came up and was saying something that was blatantly false.
So we could use it as a tool, though.
Yes.
So we can always if we always have a human who's informed before the actions are taken, let's switch over to the medical system. So if someone's having a heart attack, we have machines to start screaming and let us know. If someone's experiencing issues, they'll let us know. If a lady or gentleman is older and living in the house and they stop eating for a couple of days, they start, not feeling great. We don't want AI to force a tube down their throat and start feeding them. We want a caretaker to be notified of it.
Yes.
So like with anything, it's how you use it.
Yeah, and the medical thing is actually great because there's a lot of interesting technology coming out of that field where it can help predict diagnoses, right? Like, hey, there's a high probability that this person, take a couple of x-rays, high probability that this person has the starting of lung cancer, something that a human might miss, but having the AI look at it and having a human look at it, both the AI can highlight certain things and hopefully miss less.
Now, do you think that it's going to push technology forward as AI is built on data sets, lots and lots of what they call big data? And in order to be able to transmit and process all that, we need faster processors, we need bigger hard drives, we need things like that. You think AI will be the push to get us going forward even more?
I think it already has, right? Many people have heard about the video card shortage the past couple of years. A lot of people have been pushing their video cards and everything else because a lot of big data, a lot of these data sets work beautifully on a video card, right? It's the same kind of hardware that processes millions of pixels can process millions of points of a data set, right? Vectors, it's math.
Is there any kind of error correction in that kind of stuff?
There is. So that makes things a lot faster. Probably seeing big data sets, there's a lot of data centers that are doing this, but unfortunately, with these big data sets comes people who want to gather this data for these data sets. Mm-hmm. And so they're more likely to I'm going to give you this free service, and you're going to use this free service. And in exchange for using this free service, I get all of your data. Everything that you do, every click that you make, I can track every place where you go. And so now I can just know what you've done, and I can take all that data, I can aggregate it between my millions of users, and I can sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to anyone.
Have you seen the TV that they'll give you a free TV, free internet service for the TV, except the TV watches you? Very much like 1984.
I thought you were talking about 1984.
No, this is current. They have a company that will give you a TV and give you free streaming services, but the TV has a camera on it. And it monitors what you watch, how you're watching it.
Yeah.
With current technology, we sometimes say, Amazon must have been listening to me. I was just talking about bath towels. And there are certain things when you install apps on your phone or do searches on your computer that can have what's called a personalized identifier. And in order to be able to sell data, they have to strip out that personal identifier. However, if they still get your geographic information and your age, they can basically say that this guy, which they can say, between the ages of 25 and 33, lives here. And it doesn't take a whole lot to figure out who that person is.
There's been a couple of instances where Target has known that someone was pregnant before that person knew that they were pregnant.
That's pretty scary.
That is pretty scary.
Now, on the cybersecurity side of things, collecting all these people's data, we've seen many breaches with passwords and things like that. But now, if this data gets in the hands of the wrong attackers, they have a better idea of who their target is going to be to attack. And then also, AI can do some pretty scary things in cybersecurity, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, it can try to guess your password. It can figure out what things you might do. They can even try to become you if they wanted to,
So as a programmer, have you heard anything about AI and programming?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you concerned?
I'm a little concerned. A lot of programs now they're not written very well by programmers themselves, but also there's a lot of code that is written very, very well, right? But they're under different licenses, right? One of the most common is the GPL, or the GNU public license.
Right.
There's an AI that's been trained called Microsoft, where is it? Google Copilot, that's what it's called. Not Google, GitHub.
Microsoft.
GitHub or Microsoft Copilot. It's owned by the same company, right? GitHub is owned by Microsoft, but regardless. And this AI was trained on millions, if not billions, of lines of GPL source code. Which, okay, that's fine. It's not really a bad thing, but what can happen is what's known as code laundering, right? Where, let's say I want to have a function that does a thing, right? I want fast inverse square root.
Right.
Okay? And I say, Copilot, please write me a fast inverse square root function. And it will happily do so, including the comments from the Quake 3 source code that is GPL licensed. And now, legally speaking, my code, my whole code base, everything that's in, should be GPL licensed. But because I had GitHub Copilot write it, I can say, no, this isn't GPL license, this is my own license, and I can sell it under whatever I want.
Well, that becomes a whole other issue too, because if you write a function that adds integers together to output something, there are only so many ways you can do that.
Yeah, and so that's part of the problem. There's certain things like that example where it's too small, but you can get into an issue where larger functions can be basically ripped out of one code base and put into another, right? And that's really where the problem comes.
So I've heard of it where people have great programs they've written, they've by themselves spent years writing it, and all of a sudden someone comes along, grabs a couple functions, changes the name of the variables in it, and says just rewrite this a little bit, enough to make it not their copyright. And then you have to take it to court and figure out who's right.
And unfortunately, there are things like that even in without AI. Zynga is a big company that has done this, where they've literally taken people's games, changed the colors of some of the sprites and everything else, and republished the game as their own game.
Yeah.
And it's an independent developer. It's an independent developer versus a billion-dollar company.
Now, one good company that doesn't necessarily do that, but does use other people's stuff is Cisco. They love to buy up people's stuff that's GPL or private, and then have them stop using it and then start charging people for it.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up the cybersecurity thing. We talked about programming, we talked about how it can help seniors and kids, and could be all around good and bad. In cybersecurity, I often write programs that would seem like they are attack programs so that I understand the consequences and how to go against them. And ChatGPT is really good at doing some things that aren't that great. Taking ownership of System32, renaming all your System32 files, emailing itself out to all your contacts in Outlook. And a lot of these have been patched on the newer operating systems. That's why we tell people to get off 7. But overall, I think the best thing to do with AI is consider it to be a hammer or some kind of tool that you can add to your arsenal.
It is a tool. Now, there are a lot of really cool things that AI has done and can continue to do. We talked about medical stuff before. It is advancing medical technology, right? Researching new chemicals and stuff like that, and metallurgy. What new chemicals, what new things can we do to synthesize stuff, right? In physics, we have a neural network model that was just created, trained on 40 years worth of particle physics, right? High advanced particle physics. Hey, what's a cool model that we can use? And there was one that came out that is a much better fit than any person has come up with, right? Because it would take me months of tedious labor if I was a particle physicist to test a model that I made myself, whereas a computer, it takes minutes, right? Maybe hours.
And there's so much more we can talk about.
Yeah.
This AI is just, it's the latest, hottest thing. You can use it, you can ignore it, but I think overall it will be integrated into our lives. Last question I have, is it something to be afraid of?
At the moment, no, but it's just like anything else, right? A knife wielded by a surgeon is great. A knife wielded by a psychopath is not. And that's what we need to watch out for.
So a malicious AI who starts creating or harvesting their own data sets with access to whatever they want might be something to be concerned about.
Yes. And really, I'm more concerned about the people who are in charge of that than the AI itself. Because at the moment, they are not self-driven.
Gotcha. We're going to talk more about this in another episode, but we thank you for joining us here at ACT Computers with Tech Talk. My name's Cameron.
I'm Justin.
We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.